Well, happy Thursday. Happy Thursday. I recently purchased a car a few years back. It had a 2 year registration sticker. And that's going to expire. And I just realized that the place I go to might be closed on Saturday. Very disappointing, but that's all right. But this bill that has nothing to do with what I'm going to be talking about today. What I'm going to be talking about today is the great state of Texas is making strides to protect female sports. I think they've already saved female sports in grade school. Now they're going to protect it in college because it's an issue. I mean, you have males competing with females just because they identify as another gender. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that anybody that was born a male will have an advantage over females. It's just simple biology. I mean, it's the gender or sex or whatever you want to call it develops differently between the two genders. There's nothing that you could do to prevent that. It's just what it is. Over evolution, that's the way that we developed. What's happening with Texas transgender athlete bill? We explain in 60 seconds, which will probably be closer to several minutes. Texas Senate committee this week proposed a ban transgender college athletes from competing against other athletes that match their gender identity. Here's what the bill proposes and what opponents and advocates say about it. If passed, Senate Bill 15 would prohibit athletes from participating in competitions that are designated for biological sex opposite of the student's biological sex denote on the official birth certificate, creating an avenue for injunctive relief if higher education institution violates the bill parameters, allow female students to compete in intercollegiate athlete competitions designated for male students or corresponding intercollegiate athlete competing for females is not offer institution or institute protections against retaliation for a person who reports a violation of the bill. During the Senate Committee State Affairs meeting Monday, Riley Gaines, a former University of Kentucky swim and dive team member, testified about her experience in competing against a transgender athlete, which was a male who transferred to a female and broke records and got first place and robbed another student an opportunity. I mean, I hate to say it. I mean, when it comes to biology, science is always going to trump what the identity politics wants to say. I mean, that's just the way it is. Gaines competed and shared a locker room with the University of Pennsylvania swimmer Leah Thomas in the lead up to Thomas' 2022 National Championship victory in the 500-yard freestyle. I truly hope you can see how this is a violation of our right to privacy, Gaines told the committee during the invited testimony, and how some of us felt uncomfortable, awkward, embarrassed, even traumatized by this experience. Some will label her a transphobe and says she's full of it and she needs to get over it. Not all women have vaginas and some women have dongs and she just needs to get over it. It's the 2023. She needs to come up with the times. But we have a separation of the genders for a reason. Males just outcompete females. I mean, sure, you could probably find a scrawny male and find an athletic female and she'll win, and vice versa. But more times than not, the men will always outperform women when it comes to athletic achievements. A deep diver in Texas Senate Bill 15, transgender advocacy groups, parents of transgender children, and the American Civil Liberty Union of Texas have voiced staunch opposition to Senate Bill 15, citing the stringent testosterone level regulations implemented last fall by the National Collegiate Athletic Association. So you have bone density that's going to be different. You're going to have heart sizes that are going to be different. You're going to have lung capacity difference. That's another reason why it's a unfair advantage for transgender women. Not just testosterone levels. There's a lot that goes into it. It's a very nuanced into it. Opponents also address how the bill targets a small group and affects transgender students' mental health. Well, you know, it's a choice. I mean, it is a choice. Now, someone that is a supporter of the Second Amendment, I could see how someone could lose their Second Amendment through choices they make. Same thing with an athlete that wants to change their gender. Actions have consequences. You guys are taking a hammer to something that's already been fixed with tweezers, said Valerie DeVilli, the parent of a transgender man, on the subject of mental health. I would like to add that my son is 23 years old. He's a transgender and wants to be here today, but he didn't think he could do so without screaming. I mean, your rights are not under attack. We're just saying that if you want to compete, you're going to be in the area that we deemed over decades, over a century. Actually, I forget when that bill was passed. I think it's Title IX or Title 19 that separated the women from the men because they realized men had an unfair advantage over the women when it comes to athletic might. Every time you do this, you reinforce the idea that Texas does not want trans people to exist. No, we just want to ensure that female sports are protected. You would rather they not exist. They have a minuscule impact on women's sports because they're not women. I mean, biologically, they're not a woman. They may identify as a woman. They may look like a woman. We may identify them as a woman, but deep down, they're not really a woman. And they have certain advantages because they were born a male. They were able to outperform females. I'm only talking about biology now. I mean, like I said, if they want to be gendered as a female, people are willing to give them that courtesy. But when it comes to competition, certain rules got to be put in place. I mean, we're not saying that you can't exist. We're just saying if you want to go through this procedure, you're going to be closing certain doors because we must protect the other people right to compete fairly. Brian Glacha, attorney with the ACLU Texas, called the bill cruel. I mean, what's cruel is you're having men compete against women, and we want to say that's okay. And we have data suggesting that men develop differently than females, and they have more of an advantage. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm not trying to be transphobe. I'm just stating the data that's been proven time after time after time. We hear a lot of information tonight, and only a tiny handful of students. Klopster Boer said, it's immensely cruel to pass a law solely targeted on a tiny number. There's really no problem that the bill addresses. I mean, the bill addresses a major issue that females are being targeted and unfairly to compete against a male when they train against females their whole life. And now just because someone wants to dress up as a female, they should be allowed to compete. Just because they take hormone drugs to boost their testosterone that is going to erase puberty. SB 15 is on track to be heard by the full Senate upon a committee vote, which could come during an upcoming State Affairs Committee meeting. The House board supports the existing similar bill, House Bill 23, dubbed Save Women's Sports Act. The bill, Rep. Valerie Swan, Republican Spring, would set similar parameters but apply to schools and students at every level. Swan's bill also opens an avenue to sue if a student is deprived of an athletic opportunity or suffers any direct or indirect harm if a school were to knowingly violate the act. Senator Mayes Middleton Galveston, who's primary author of SB 15, has filed an identical bill to Swanson, SB 649. In 2021, Governor Abbott signed into a law similar measure prohibiting transgender students, athletes, and public schools from competing in sports based on their gender identity. The matter has remained a priority for Abbott, who in February vowed that the legislature would pass transgender sports bill this season. We fought for the rights of women to be able to succeed in the world, only to have that now superseded by this ideologically that men are going to empower to compete against women in things that should be protected by federal and state law, Abbott said at the time. I think it's supposed to be federal and state law because it's only two things. I mean, like I said, it's tough because you want to be supportive of this movement because I think everybody should have a right. As long as you don't want to go too bizarre and be labeled something that's unpronounceable or a gender that doesn't exist because there's only two genders. I think you should have the right to exist. I think you should have the respect that's given as a basic human being. But at the same time, if you want to transition, you have to know that there's consequences to that, and that consequences is you can't compete in sports unless it's a gender neutral sport or open to every gender. There's already a plan to get a transgender league going. Now, some have argued there's not enough people to make it work, but it's a solution. I mean, nobody's saying that you can't compete against other people, just can't compete in a females only realm because they have to be protected. I mean, you want the same opportunity that males have is to compete against other males. You want females to compete against other females. I mean, let's be honest, every time a female tries to compete against a male, they tend to not to do so well. Then you also have the UFC fights where a transgender female just literally brutally slaughters their opponent just because of the testosterone levels, the bone density, the muscle mass. I mean, there's certain things that drugs cannot reverse. And we have to be honest about that. And I think sports is one of those final frontiers that we must protect. We must protect females in female sports. If they want to compete against the men, then they should be competing against the men. But however, the fact is, men have an unfair advantage when it comes to athletics. And that's why we have a female league. And now they want to change the female league to create an unfair advantage again. And we're trying to prevent this from happening. At least the state's preventing it from happening. I don't know what their personal beliefs are, nor do I care. What I do care is that we protect the women. We've been going on Me Too to protect the women. But yet, whenever a man wants to become a woman, we must roll over and the red carpet, which I don't necessarily agree with. With that being said, that is my video for today. Leave all your hates in the comments below and how a bigot I am, how a fascist I am, or how I'm speaking reason. It don't really matter. Nobody really comments on my videos, and I don't really care. I mean, I care, but don't really care, if that makes sense. With that being said, that is my video. Leave a comment down below on what your thoughts are. And most importantly, have yourself a wonderful day, morning, or evening.